Hey guys, welcome to this lecture video. I'm going to talk a little bit about DNA just because it's important with genetics. It ties into genetics. I'm not going to focus on DNA in this lecture video, but we're going to touch on it a little bit and talk about chromosomes. And then we're actually going to talk about genetics, phenotype, genotype, and how to do a Punnett square. So here we go. All right, DNA, that's what the picture was on the first slide. That was actually the double helix. We'll talk more about DNA structure in a different lecture video. But DNA is going to be located in the nucleus of the cell. And it's going to come in these packaged threads, structures known as chromosomes. So it's housed in the nucleus, but it's going to be packaged into chromosomes. And then these chromosomes are going to carry the genetic information, and those are known as the genes. And this is my best attempt at a chromosome, which is it's pretty bad, but oh well. It's the best I can do. I'm no artist, and I'll admit it. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about these chromosomes and genes. So the genes are found, oh Lord, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. That looks terrible. The genes are found on the chromosomes, and each gene has a special location on the chromosome, and that's going to be known as a gene locus or gene loci. And so what that means is that if this is a chromosome in this location, maybe this is chromosome, I'll just go with 14, for example. This location, this is very hypothetical, that's the gene locus, and maybe this chromosome, this section of the chromosome codes for hair color. And then this section here codes for eye color. And this section here codes for widow's peak. So you can see how there's multiple genes on one chromosome, and they're coding for different traits, genetic traits. And so on every chromosome number 14, you're going to have the same gene located at the same location or gene locus. So that means that you're going to get, to make up your 46 chromosomes, you're going to get a chromosome 14 from your mom. So let's say this is mom's, and you're going to get a chromosome 14 from your dad. And so at the same place on both of those chromosomes, at the gene locus, you're going to have this gene coding for the same thing on both of those chromosomes. So at this gene loci, there will be an allele. And two of these make up a single gene in your genotype, or basically the type of alleles you have. That's what the genotype means, is the type of alleles you have. So here at this gene locus, you're going to have an allele that's going to code for hair color. We'll use that. And over here, you're going to have an allele on dad's chromosome that is going to code for eye color. And this is going to be your pair here, right here. These are your chromosomes. You got one chromosome 14 from mom, one chromosome 14 from dad. And here you can see that at the gene loci, you're going to have alleles, and the alleles that you have, the set of alleles that you have, are going to make up your genotype. You're going to receive one allele from each of your parents. So one allele is going to come from mom, one allele is going to come from dad. Let's talk a little bit more about chromosomes. So humans have 46 chromosomes total. We have 23 pairs. Make sure you know the difference in that. Also, read test questions carefully. Humans have 46 chromosomes total, but we have 23 pairs, which gives us the 46. So you're going to have 23 that come from mom and 23 that come from dad. We're going to look at what these chromosomes look like in just a minute. All right, so let's talk about sex chromosomes a little bit. I mentioned this in an earlier video, but I just want to go back over it for just a second. If a sperm carrying an X chromosome meets an egg, the child is going to be a girl, or a, let's use better terms than that, Emma, a female. There we go. We'll be scientific. Okay, so if a sperm carrying an X chromosome meets an egg, remember all eggs have X chromosomes. So every egg will have an X chromosome. Everybody gets one. But if a sperm carries an X chromosome and meets the egg carrying an X, we end up with a female. If the sperm is actually carrying a Y chromosome and it meets the egg with the X, that child will be a male, or offspring will be a male there. And there is a 50% chance every time you have an offspring of having a boy or a girl. So you get a 50% chance of having a boy or girl, and it is the sperm that determines that, because everybody gets an X. All right, so here's a karyotype. So I wanted to show you what a karyotype looks like. This individual here is going to be a male. You can see that because we have an X and we have a Y. Over here, this individual is going to be a female, and that's because we have two X's. And this is going to be your 23rd pair, your sex chromosomes. So you can see how underneath each pair you have numbers. These are the numbers of the chromosomes. Some chromosomes are much longer than other chromosomes. That means they are carrying more genes. If you look here at the sex chromosomes for this male, notice how much longer the X chromosome is than the Y chromosome. Look how short that Y chromosome is. And that's because there's not many traits or genes that are carried on the Y chromosome, because only males get a Y. Both males and females get an X, so that's why there's many more genes on the X chromosome than there are on the Y chromosome. And most of those traits are specific to males there, so on the Y. All right, so I want to talk more about genotypes and phenotypes in these alleles. So there are possible genotypes. Remember, genotypes your genotype is your set of alleles that you receive. Remember, you get one from mom, one from dad, and there are a few possibilities. Let's talk about the two types of alleles. You have dominant alleles and you have recessive alleles. Dominant alleles mask recessive alleles. Recessive alleles are masked by dominant alleles. And dominant alleles are noted by a capital letter. And recessive alleles are noted by a lowercase letter. I like to use A's because this is obviously a capital and this is obviously a lowercase. Sometimes when you use like S's, it can get kind of confusing as to which is uppercase, which is lowercase. So I like to just use A's, but you can use whatever letter you prefer. I'm going to kind of erase this here. So let's look at the chromosomes again from mom and dad here. So this is coming from mom, this is dad. Let's look at dimpled chins, for example. My fiance has a little dimpled chin or a cleft chin. Many celebrities have them, actually. But that is a dominant trait. So if you have a cleft chin, then that's a dominant trait. I do not, so I would be recessive for that trait. So let's look here. We'll say that mom here is me, so I would be giving a recessive allele here, a lowercase, because I do not have it. And let's say my fiance here does, so because he does have it, whoops. Oh no, there we go. He has an uppercase. So if our children receive this set of alleles, they would have one dominant, one recessive, and this is what we call heterozygous. And if you are heterozygous, that means you have one dominant allele, one recessive. Other possible genotypes are you can have one of each, which means you're heterozygous. You can have two dominant alleles, that means you're homozygous. Dominant. Or you can have two recessive alleles, which means you're homozygous recessive. I am going to be homozygous recessive for this trait because I do not have a cleft chin. In order to have a cleft chin, you have to have a dominant allele. So my fiance, I don't know which one he is, but he could either be heterozygous or he could be homozygous. Dominant for cleft chin. And because here you've got two dominant alleles, so he would have to have a cleft chin. Here we've got a dominant and a recessive, but remember the recessive gets masked by the dominant trait, so here he would end up with a cleft chin. And so these are your possible genotypes, and the phenotype, a phenotype is going to be the physical trait here. So if you are this genotype, you're going to have, your phenotype would be normal chin. If you're this genotype, your phenotype would be cleft chin because of that dominant allele. And if you're this genotype, heterozygous, then your phenotype would be cleft chin. So let's do a Punnett square. So over here in the corner, let's put my genotype up. We know that the only possibility is for me to be homozygous recessive, because that's the only way you end up with a normal chin. So no dominant alleles, because remember, cleft chin is a dominant trait. So here I'm recessive. Let's put him over here. Let's say he is heterozygous. That's the worst box known to man. Okay. So now then, you usually put, if you have a capital letter, you always put it first. So I'm going to bring this A over here, this A down, so we end up in this box with a big A, little a. Over here, you bring this A over here, this A down, so we end up with big A, little a. This A comes over, this A comes down, this A comes over, this A comes down. And so the genotypes here, this is our Punnett square for our offspring. So we have a 50% chance of genotype of our kids, if he's heterozygous, of our kids being heterozygous, and a 50% chance that our kids will be homozygous recessive. So those are the genotypes. This is the phenotypes here. So 50% chance that they will be, remember it's heterozygous, we have a dominant, so 50% chance they will have a cleft chin, and a 50% chance they will have a normal chin. Let's go over here and let's say that he is actually homozygous dominant. So let's do another Punnett square where he is homozygous dominant. Now we could figure this out whether he's heterozygous or homozygous dominant if we looked at his parents, and we looked at his parents to see if they have cleft chins, to determine whether he would be carrying the recessive allele or not. But let's just do this one over here just to see. So here we move this big A over, this little a down, big A over, little a down, big A over, little a down, big A over, little a down. And here you can see there is a 100% chance that our offspring would be heterozygous, have the heterozygous genotype, and have a cleft chin, which is the phenotype. I do want to clarify that this box here, the Punnett square, that's the percent chance that your offspring will have the trait. This is not offspring 1, offspring 2, okay? This is every time you have a child, you would have a 100% chance of them being heterozygous and having a cleft chin. It is not, this is child 1, child 2, child 3, child 4. Okay, that's not how that works. It's every single time that's your child, every time you have an offspring, that's the chance that they would have of having the trait. Well, I hope this helps you with genotype and phenotype, understanding that more in Punnett squares. There will be worksheets for you and answer keys posted. Please let me know if you have any questions.